Ladies and sinners, welcome to another Tuesday evening edition of the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I know we are usually on 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, but guess what, folks? Life happens. Sometimes meetings to better your community show up, and luckily, Larry B., the man, the myth, the legend, the jefe of IE Sports Radio said, hey, dude, get on when you can. I totally understand. I really appreciate that. Adam Karnick's already stopped the show. Man, this is a impromptu show, and Adam Karnick's here. Again, him and Taryn are the best teammates at IE Sports Radio. Straight up. Best teammates at IE Sports Radio. This is the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'm your host, Cale Henderson. You guys can get at us on our Twitter forums at SinCity_IESR or at Cale_Henderson, where we talk all things Vegas and all things sports in general. It's going to be a short show because it is a bit later than normal, but we got a ton of draft coverage, man. Ton of draft coverage. But before we get into that, we got to talk about our sponsors. Planet Jerky, premium brisket beef jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm Single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, low in sugar, and high in protein. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet. You guys can research Planet Jerky at Planet Jerky on Instagram, where you guys can kind of take a look at some of the options they have, look at their store link. It's awesome. Give them a shot. Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch. Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll seal the deal. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. Instagram, at @SealTheDeal_wax stamps. Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals. And then for our platform, IE Sports Radio, for the last 9 years, IE Sports Radio has brought you amazing content, ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok to keep up with the latest trends in sports and with our shows. Also, check out our daily updated website, iesportsradio.com, for sports news, the IE Sports Radio blog, our Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month, pages dedicated to each podcast, our IE Sports Radio community forum, and stop by the shop to check out the merch. Thank you for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports. And when it comes to the Sin City Sports or any show at IE Sports Radio, especially the Sin City Sports Show, if you guys miss an episode, don't even worry about it. Guess what? Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, CastBox, YouTube, Podchaser, Giosvan. I don't care if I get that wrong. It just looks great. By the way, it's spelled Jisaavn. I'm so off on that. I don't care. Giosvan sounds better anyway. And the IE Sports Radio personal page, by the way. IESportsRadio.com has a personal page for each show. Make sure you guys click, follow, like. It helps the algorithms, helps out the shows at IE Sports Radio. And we would love any kind of sports you guys show. Adam Karnick chimes in. Admit it, you're later on tonight because you were watching 5 goals against Vancouver. Hey, man, listen. Before we get to the Raiders draft coverage, I hate to gloat, but I'm going to. I've talked about it a few times, and you've chimed in when you can. But this Vegas team, even without Aiden Hill, like I've said it numerous times, this Vegas team is dangerous. They're not playing around. I don't know if the Canucks have much to play for because they've already got the division. If I were them, I would, just skate them out there every once in a while to keep fresh legs, especially their starting guys. But yeah, 5 goals through the second period. It's 5-2. Now, I've seen the Golden Knights crumble, by the way. It's happened before. So we can't say anything too positive about them, of course. But it does look pretty good. And they're on a 2-game win streak right now, I believe. 2-game win streak would be huge. A third game would be nuts. I've said this for the last few weeks. I said this like a few weeks ago when it was 15 games left. I said if the Golden Knights can treat this as if there are 3 5-game stretches, and somehow the Golden Knights can win 12 games before the end of the season, they will be planted firmly in second place. Now, there is also a scenario, and I sent this to Adam Karnick and the Neutral Zone, by the way. Adam Karnick is the host of Chi-Town Weekly as well as the Neutral Zone here on IE Sports Radio. I did send him a tweet. I tagged him. I said, hey, man, there's a possibility the Pacific Division could have 3, almost 4 teams score 100 points this year in the standings. That is unbelievable, man. And I believe it's going to happen in the on the Eastern Conference as well, in Boston's division, where they're just winning games left and right. I think it's impressive. I think it's massively impressive. But yeah, I'm really excited to see what the Golden Knights do, because listen, it's not going to be easy. It's never easy. And Edmonton just lost a game recently. So if the Golden Knights can win, you're within 3 points. You're within 3 points. You're 5 points ahead of the Los Angeles Kings for third place. You're within 3 points for second place. If you keep this run up, again, I said it a couple weeks ago. If the Golden Knights somehow find a way to score in 12 to 14 games, so that could be 1 point. If they find a way to score at least out of 14 out of the 15 games, 12 to 15 out of the games, out of the remaining 15 games, they were going to be second place. And it's very, very possible. Adam chimes in, there are already 6 100-point teams now, plus a handful of 90-plus point teams right behind them. Yeah, dude, it's crazy. Vancouver's 100 points. They will probably stay at 100 tonight. Wink, wink. Hopefully. I might have said that way too soon. Colorado Avalanche, 100. Dallas Stars, 103. Carolina Hurricanes, by the way, they've been really good the last few years. Hurricanes, 101. New York Rangers have really turned it around since they did their full rebuild, 104. And then you got the Boston Bruins at 103. I'm not going to lie to you, Adam. I really want the Vancouver Canucks to win every game after this game. And I say that because the President's Trophy winner has been an early round exit like the last 10 years in the NHL playoffs. And the Canucks are dangerous. But, if there needs to be an early round exit team, I wouldn't be mad about Dallas. Dallas Stars are really good too. This is a deep... So, Adam, have we ever seen this many teams score 100 points? I know you're listening, so chime in when you can. Have we ever seen this many teams score 100 points in the NHL? Because there's a possibility at least 2 more. So you'll have 8 teams over 100 points by the time playoffs start. That to me is crazy, man. That is crazy to me. Because after tonight, Golden Knights will have 7 more games. I think they'll surpass 100 unless they completely crap their pants. I think they'll surpass 100 points. You tell me, Adam. I don't know if I can think of a season. I don't know if I can think of a season where there were 8 teams that scored 100 points. And this could be 8 or more. Like, you're right. There are 6 100-point teams now, and there are at least 4 teams that could. So, like, the Golden Knights and the Oilers, I think, are teams that are pretty much primed to beat 100 points. So that's 2 right there. Winnipeg could easily be that. They could do that. If Nashville goes on a run, they could do it with 7 games left. Let's see here. And then the Maple Leafs. Shoot, I mean, technically Tampa Bay could do it. Meanwhile, San Jose and Chicago are still under 50 points. Hey, man, sometimes it's okay to just admit you're on a rebuild mode. It's all good. Listen, I don't want to hear Chicago fans gripe, especially you Chi-Town Weekly hosts. You guys had 3 titles in 10 years. Sorry, it was basically 3 titles in 6 years at one point. You have 3 more titles than you have 3 more titles than Canadian teams the last 25 years. So I don't feel bad for those teams. San Jose sucks. I used to be a Sharks fan when I was younger. I would play Sega, that NHL game Sega. I'd always want to be the Sharks because a shark was one of my favorite animals growing up. Big time. I was terrified of them Jaws completely kept me up at night, but there was something about the San Jose Sharks. What an epic hockey team that was. And their logo was sick. Like their old school logo was super cool. Not saying it isn't now because it's pretty dope, but you know, I'm a Vegas Golden Knights and Ducks fan here. So it is what it is. I think this NHL season's been so good. So much parity. So much fun to watch. And I think it's only going to get more interesting. Only going to get more interesting. That San Jose logo is legit. I love that logo. Yeah, dude, it's legit one of the best in sports. That Sharks logo is super sick. And I remember it back when it was just Sega, like 20 plus years ago, right? On Sega, that NHL game on Sega. So cool. I was always the Sharks. And back then, ratings didn't matter. Everybody was basically the same in those Sega games. You just picked a team and then just started skating around and shooting at each other. It was so great. The good old days, man. But damn, you're right. San Jose's only got 42 points. Ducks suck too, though, so I can't really talk too much crap. Ducks suck real bad. Oh my gosh. San Jose, their score differential is negative 133. They've allowed 133 more goals than they've scored this year. What? Oh, that's horrible. And the Blackhawks are barely better. You know, the good thing is there's a lottery in the NHL, correct, Adam? So, like, the worst team isn't guaranteed the number one overall pick, correct? You can correct me if you want to, but I believe that's the case. I think they adopted that rule. Unless you're an expansion team, you show up with the number one pick, but I'm pretty positive they do a lottery, which is pretty cool. Those bottom five teams, which means, you know, you can't tank and you're guaranteed a top five spot, but you can't tank and just get the number one pick, which is what a lot of leagues do, unfortunately. But I think this is something that the NHL and the NBA are doing really well, if that's what the NHL does as well. So yeah, Golden Knights currently up 5-2 at the end of the second period here against the Vancouver Canucks. Great game. It makes you wonder: are the Canucks kind of laying off a bit? Are they laying off because they know that they've got the division already? That's not something you usually see in hockey, because I just think in general hockey players are they're men, they're real men. It's a real man sport, and they don't take games off. But I could be wrong. Could be 100% wrong. Maybe the Canucks said, hey, it's time to start resting guys, making sure they're good to go. And I apologize. I think I was incorrect. I thought I saw 1 minute left. So 7:21 left in the second. The Vegas Golden Knights are up 5-2. It's a great pad. Just can't let it go. Indeed, the more simple lottery than the NBA, but there is a lottery. You have to finish in the bottom three, I believe, to get the top pick. Okay. That's super cool. But it's not guaranteed. They just get their what? They just get their name or their team thrown in a hat, and then it's drawn. Is that what usually happens? Is it like a little raffle? They spin it, the logo's on the ball or whatever? I've never fully watched an NHL draft like that. That'd be cool to know. Taryn Rodriguez is the best teammate. Adam and Taryn, I was just talking about you, Taryn. Your ears must have been ringing a little bit. I was talking about how you and Adam are the best teammates in IE Sports Radio. You guys are amazing. Thank you for joining the show. Guess what, folks? It is draft season. It's draft month. We are 3 weeks away from the 2024 NFL draft. And you know what makes this even cooler? Guess who renewed their PFF subscription? Oh, yeah. This guy. I hit that mock draft simulator like it's going out of style, and I should stop doing it. But guess who renewed it, baby? Oh, yeah. The NFL, college football, the NFL draft. I love it. I think PFF does a great job. Sometimes they're way off. Like, it is what it is. Can't really deny that. But, I mean, for the most part, they have the right idea. Adam said, yes, the lottery, it's ping pong balls. The worst team gets the best shot, but no guarantee of getting the top picks. Right, so like the worst team would have 3 balls, the second place team would have 2, and the third place team would have 1, and then whoever, does that sound right? That would be the easiest way to probably do that, honestly, to better the odds. So we're going to talk about the Raiders draft. The Raiders are currently at 13th, right? And I think they've made some good moves this offseason, some smart moves. I was actually just talking about it with a buddy of mine when I was meeting. We're trying to set up, free clinics for youth football coaches around the area of Lincoln, Nebraska. And we happened to get on topic, right? Pardon me. We happened to get on topic of the Raiders because he was like, dude, your team's actually made smart decisions. He's right. And low key, the smartest decision that the Raiders have made this year, in my opinion, was that they didn't bring back Josh Jacobs. They didn't re-sign him to a big contract. They didn't commit $13 million a year to a running back, when in today's NFL, you don't have to do that. Draft picks, those 4th to 7th round running backs are absolutely cooking these days. And it's because teams are investing more in the trenches, on the outside, and in the quarterback. If you do that, you're going to have a better team. These running backs, man, they're a dime a dozen. So get 2 or 3 of them on your roster and go with the hot hand on a weekly basis. That is my firm belief when it comes to the running back in today's NFL. And I think that's the best way to handle it. Totally think it's the best way to handle it. Adam says, so who would you target for the Raiders at 12? So the Raiders are actually at 13 this year. It's interesting you say that. So what we can do is we can talk about the top players, right? Because the nice thing about PFF is they do a total table of contents and analysis on players, which is something I think they do a great job of. I love that they set up examples with quarterbacks. Like, for example, one of my favorite statistics that they do is quarterbacks under pressure. Like, when they receive pressure, how do they act? That to me tells me a lot about the quarterback, because I think majority of these quarterbacks all have unbelievable arm strength. I think they're all turning into athletes these days. I think that's just kind of the mold of today's NFL quarterback. But if we're being honest, like, the thing that I look at the most when it comes to quarterbacks, 100%, to me, 100% is the pressure grade. How do they behave against pressure? That to me tells me the type of quarterback that you're going to be receiving. In the NFL, there's nothing but pressure. In the NFL, you have nothing but, excellent players that are hunting your ass down. So if your team doesn't build an offensive line and your quarterback's receiving pressure like 99% of the time or 48% of the time, like what Derek Carr did when the Raiders were, it is what it is. It's frustrating. Absolutely frustrating. But that's the reality. So when I look up Caleb Williams, he is believed to be the best quarterback in this entire draft, right? Do you think the stats would back that up? His passing grade's pretty good, 84.6. His deep grade's 94.4. His no pressure grade, he's a 93 percentile, man. He's a top quarterback in this draft. Intermediate grade, 78% or 78. His pressure grade, do you think it's north of 50, Adam? The guy that I believe the Chicago Bears are going to inevitably draft, do you think Caleb Williams' pressure grade is very good? I know you're listening, so you chime in. And just so you guys know, people out there, Raiders pick at 13 this year. The Broncos, unfortunately, pick at 12. Terrence says, looking at you, Telesco. I know you miss Telesco a little bit. He knows how to put teams together, man. I think coaching was the issue with that Chargers organization. So, Adam, you think that it was above 50? I want to make sure that's clear. You think Caleb Williams' pressure grade was above 50? What if I told you out of the top 5 quarterbacks in this draft, according to PFF, Caleb Williams had the worst grade against pressure with a 38.9? When that guy saw penetration, he tried to run away. He didn't slide, he didn't maneuver, he didn't find the open guy. Now, granted, this USC team was nowhere near as good as the year before, and I firmly believe that. And I think Caleb Williams was kind of thrown out there to the wolves at times because it was a younger team that just didn't have as much talent. But what if I told you between Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, J.J. McCarthy, and Michael Penix, those are the top 5 guys, right? Caleb Williams had the worst grade against pressure. And if you don't believe me, I'll tweet it out for you, Chicago fans, because I'd love to rub it in your face a little bit. Drake May had a 61.3. I believe, if I remember correctly, I believe Jaden Daniels, his pressure grade was 63. So you definitely want it to be above 50. That's usually the metric. You definitely want it to be above 50. J.J. McCarthy's pressure grade was a 72.9. So he was in the green, and he's got a blue dot, which means he was one of the better ones in this draft. And basically what PFF does is they take that grade and they grade it against like the last 300 quarterbacks they've graded. So if you have a blue dot in your area and in the way that your statistics come out, you're usually a really good player. Unbelievable player. It means you're well above average against the other, positional groups that they've been grading. J.J. McCarthy was graded at 90.6. J.J. McCarthy got the most shit out of all of these quarterbacks because he played for a really good Michigan team. Got the most shit. He just wasn't asked to do as much. He threw 22 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. I think there are some NFL teams right now that would love that. That's a good question, Adam. Is that a result of refusing to run or a systematic problem that can't be fixed? I don't think it's a systematic problem because 5 of the last 10 Heisman Trophy winners have been air raid quarterbacks. I don't think it's a system issue. Usually with the air raid, you have a guy open. There's literally 5 receivers. You have 5 options. Majority of the time, there are not 5 DBs out there covering your team. So there's usually at least somebody open. I don't think the talent level at USC was as good. But I will say this. Even in years past, I didn't think Caleb looked that great when he was getting pressure. I think he makes bad decisions. His throws are a little more errant. Is he still a baller? Absolutely. Do I think he's the top guy in this draft? Yes. I think Caleb Williams is the top guy in this draft. Do I think he has the most potential? No. We've been over this on my takes, guys. Drake May is the best dude in the draft to me, as far as potential, right? The most intriguing player is Jaden Daniels at quarterback. The quarterback I think will have the most success will be J.J. McCarthy if he lands in the right spot. And that's why I'm bringing this up. When we talk about the Raiders at 13, this is what I know is not going to happen. And I say I know this because I'm preparing myself mentally. I don't believe the Raiders are going to be able to trade up for a guy without giving away 3 first-round picks. And that is extremely steep. That is a steep ask, man. Because here's the reality. When we look at the current draft order, right? When we look at the current draft order, we know that the top 3 teams need quarterbacks. Chicago, Washington, and the Patriots. Chicago, Washington, and New England all need quarterbacks. If I was New England, you no longer have Mac Jones. I'm picking a guy. Now, if you only like the guy, you don't love the guy that's left, because the top 2 guys are going to go no matter what. If you only like the guy, you don't love the guy, then I would trade out. If you don't love a prospect, you don't pick them. You trade out, right? That's just the way it is. But if the Patriots love one of those top 3 guys, or if Patriots love all 3 of those guys and they can grab a quarterback at 3, they take a quarterback because they need to. They need a franchise quarterback if they want to be relevant. If Gerard Mayo wants to keep his job in the future, they have to find their franchise guy and they have to build around him. Simple. Period. That's how it's got to be done. So when you look at the top 3 picks, Chicago, Washington, and New England, they need quarterbacks. I don't think the Raiders are trading up for any one of those spots. Chicago traded away Justin Fields. They're in the market for a quarterback. Caleb Williams is almost definite, man. I like Jaden Daniels a lot. I would probably pick Jaden Daniels if I was the Bears, and I wouldn't feel bad about it at all. But Caleb is a special talent that if you put a right team around him, he could be amazing. So that's why Caleb Williams, I think, is going to inevitably be number one. Number two is a toss-up for me. Here's why. Jaden Daniels is probably the better option between him and Drake May right now, because Drake May does need some time to grow. But because Cliff Kingsbury is the offensive coordinator in Washington, I believe Drake May is the better fit, and he has the most potential in this draft. So if you put a really good team around him, which I think Adam Peters, who is an excellent GM, who's a great evaluator of talent, can do with Washington's resources, all those draft picks they have. I think they have like 6 or 7 in the top 100 this year, which is incredible. There's a good possibility that Drake May could be very, very good in Washington. And they've needed a franchise quarterback for years. So that puts number 3 out there. And there's no way Gerard Mayo passes on Jaden Daniels. So if I'm the Raiders, I know that if I want one of these top 5 guys, I have to love J.J. McCarthy. I have to love Michael Penix, because those are the 2 remaining that are left out. Are you going to trade up for 13 for J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix? Probably not. Probably not. I think the Raiders will try. But here's the other teams that need a quarterback. Your top 3 teams need a quarterback. I think all 3 of them pick a quarterback this year. I do. I believe, this is just my opinion, I believe that the Cardinals trade out of 4 because they have a ton of needs. Like a ton of needs. Adam Karnick says a lot of Bears fans want Daniels. He looks like Justin Fields light, so I get it. Jaden Daniels is a better thrower of the football than Justin Fields was coming out of college. He had a much better trajectory of growth than Justin Fields did at Ohio State, because he did get better each and every year. And this last year was unbelievable. His Heisman Trophy performance this year was unbelievable. And he did have some really, really good pass catchers. That is the one thing I think could really just absolutely hurt whoever goes to the Patriots. They don't have anybody to throw to right now. Like their top 3 picks, whether it's the first, second, and third, 2 of those top 3 should probably be pass catchers if they can get it done, because they don't have receivers. It is a barren wasteland of receivers in New England, which is also why a lot of people were rumoring that, you know, with Jacoby Brissett there, they might go after Marvin Harrison Jr. I just don't see it. I think the Patriots pick their quarterback. You pick your franchise guy and you build around him. It's that simple. The Cardinals, I think, trade out of 4. Would the Raiders trade up to 4? I don't know. I don't see it, man. This is what I'm trying to say for Raiders fans that are listening right now. I don't know if the Raiders have the juice to jump the Giants, who need a quarterback. Falcons have Kirk Cousins, but they could still trade up for a quarterback. I think the Jets need a future quarterback. They have Rodgers. He's a stud, but you can't guarantee he's going to be here for another 2 or 3 more years. They need a franchise guy. A J.J. McCarthy would be perfect in that system. A Michael Penix would be perfect in that Jets system. The Vikings and the Broncos are 2 very quarterback-needy teams. I could see those 2 teams making moves to 6 or 4 before I see the Raiders doing it, because the Raiders are going to have to give up a lot. And there's a possibility they get the 4th best quarterback in this draft. Not the 2nd, not the 3rd, the 4th. That's why I'm trying to set the expectation right now. I don't believe the Raiders are going to trade up to 13. Or trade up from 13. I don't see it. I think they have a pretty decent quarterback in Aiden O'Connell. I think that once the Giants try and get their guy, because I think they're going to get one of those top 5 guys, or at least try to. I think once the Giants draft that dude, there's a possibility that Daniel Jones is let go. And that the Giants just eat that contract for a couple of years. At that point, you have a guy that you can bring in to be a camp arm or compete with the Raiders. But I still think AOC is somebody that people really like in that room. Daniel Jeremiah said it himself. He thinks Aiden O'Connell did an excellent job, and he could probably get better, especially if you build a team around him. Something in my gut tells me that the Raiders will be picking somebody at 13, because I don't know if we have the juice to trade up from 13 ahead of the Vikings, the Broncos, the Giants. I just don't see it. I really don't. I wish I could, but I don't. That's 3 teams you have to trade ahead, and then your top 3 teams need a quarterback. So there's roughly 7 teams in the top 13 that need quarterbacks. And there's only 5 really good first-round graded quarterbacks. I just don't see it, man. And I think the mock draft simulator at PFF is completely wrong because there's no way Michael Penix makes it to the second round, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but in my opinion, Michael Penix will still be drafted in the first round. He could be in the teens, he could be in the mid-20s, but I still think that a team will trade up if they really need a quarterback to get Michael Penix. And I think that's something that Daniel Jeremiah and them are kind of predicting for the Raiders. They think the Raiders will pick somebody best available at 13 and then try and trade back into the first round. Late into the first round if Michael Penix is still there. I just don't know if it's the case because look at the other teams, right? The LA Rams need a future quarterback. Say what you want, man, but Stafford, that retirement's been rumored for years. You do not have a replacement for Matt Stafford. He doesn't exist out there right now. Michael Penix could be a good pick, and it's outside zone. Penix has shown he can run a 4.46. He's got one of the best arms in this draft. Michael Penix could very easily be a pick for the LA Rams. And one of the rare first-round picks we see the LA Rams have. It's a definite possibility. Or the LA Rams could be smart and go after a D lineman too, because you have to replace arguably the greatest to ever play that position in Aaron Donald. I still think the Steelers are looking for a quarterback. I know they traded for Fields, but I mean, if Penix is there and available and you can bring him in to compete, why not? I don't know if Miami's sold on Tua. Tua's left-handed. Penix is left-handed. I believe Penix has a better arm. Just being honest. Again, the Vikings at 23. If the Vikings don't think that they can get up and get it done, they could pick best available at 11 and still end up with Michael Penix at 23. Or they trade up from 23 somewhere else if Penix is there just to make sure they get a guy. Either way, I think McCarthy or Penix is a Viking by the end of the first round on the 25th. So the Raiders' quarterback options are extremely limited. I believe the Raiders will pick the best available player. So here's the guys that I would really like to see the Raiders pick. I don't know if we need a pass rusher. I like Malcolm Kuntz. He was just extended. Or it's projected that he will be extended. I love Max Crosby. He's a dog, right? You just went out and got Christian Wilkins. I don't think you need to get another pass rusher. What I would like to see is a corner, because we don't have a premier corner. Nate Hobbs is a stud. I like him a lot. But other than Nate Hobbs, Jack Jones is pretty damn good too, by the way. He was picked up on the waiver wire last year, absolutely dominant. We still have that video of him staring Patrick Mahomes down as he picked him off and ran into the end zone. So a cornerback is definitely in play. But in today's NFL, you have to get after the quarterback. If you're going to get to Patrick Mahomes, and that is the pinnacle, right? That is the pedestal. That is who we have to get to. He is the mark. How do you do that? You stack your defensive line with young, very talented players. So if I were the Raiders, I would go the best defensive lineman available. And for me, that would be Byron Murphy. For some reason, people love that Newton kid out of Illinois. I'm just not seeing it. I think Byron Murphy's a better player. I think he's stronger. I think he's better. He's going to probably he could play a nose tackle position while Wilkins plays that defensive tackle position. They could rotate back and forth. You still have John Jenkins behind these guys. Darius Butler is still behind these guys, or could rotate in as starters as well. You add Byron Murphy to this line with Malcolm Kuntz, with Max Crosby, with Christian Wilkins. This is a scary, scary, scary ass defensive line. And that is how you compete against good quarterbacks. You beat them up. You get penetration in the A and B gap, and you beat up quarterbacks. That's how you're going to get to Patrick Mahomes. So to me, you have to get guys in the middle that are absolutely going to command a presence or some sort of attention from the interior offensive line. Because what's been happening over the last couple of years is the tackle tight end or the tackle guard have been doubling Max. Max is still getting pressure, but have been doubling Max, and the remainder of the defensive line has not been able to get the job done until the last 8 games last year when Malcolm Kuntz really came out of his shell. And I think Malcolm Kuntz had the potential the whole time. He was just kind of, I think the guy was just kind of put, I don't know how you want to say it. I think the guy was just an afterthought. I don't think he was a McDaniels guy. Because if I remember correctly, he was one of the last Gruden Mayock draft picks in the 3rd round from Buffalo. But he came on, man. He was a beast. The other thing the Raiders could really look into, because they have to protect their 4th round quarterback in Aiden O'Connell, who I think will end up being the starter. I don't know if Gardner Minshew can beat him out. If Gardner Minshew beats out AOC, we're in way deeper trouble than we think. Because Gardner Minshew is a fringe starter, but he is definitely a career backup. He's not a guy that's going to move the needle for you. So if Gardner Minshew beats out AOC, we're in a lot of trouble. Like, we're looking at a quarterback next year, dude. We're building this roster, and then we're looking at a quarterback next year for sure. But if I were the Raiders, for me, it's interior defensive line, or it is an offensive lineman, which you have Fashanu. J.C. Latham could be an absolute stud at 13. The other options are, if there are teams trying to trade up with the Raiders, take the trade. Get more picks. Put more talent on this roster. Build an epic roster. You know what made the Chiefs so great? Their roster was already set up and ready to go when Patrick Mahomes took over. The Chiefs had an unbelievable roster. They already had Tyreek Hill. They already had Travis Kelce. 2 guys are probably going to be in the Hall of Fame. Alex Smith was thrown to that dude. They had Jamal Charles. They had now Jamal Charles was on his way out when Patrick took over. Don't get me wrong. But still, their offensive line was very good. Like, very good. There is nothing wrong with building your team and then going to get your guy when it's opportune. And when you think about it, as other than just the 3 Super Bowls for Patrick Mahomes, he's probably the greatest trade ever. Because I believe that the Chiefs only had to give up a 1st round pick and a 3rd round pick to go up and get Patrick Mahomes from the 20s. That is insane value for that trade. And it's rare. It'll never happen again, probably. So my point is, Raiders need to build their roster. If they cannot trade up and get the guy that they really want, the one that they love in this draft, which they will probably have to mortgage their future, I'm thinking at least, obviously, number 13 pick would be there. Maybe a pick this year in the 3rd or 4th round. The next 2 first-round picks for sure. There could even be a 3rd first-round pick. That's how much value is going to be on these top quarterbacks, because you are going to have to entice one of those top 3 teams who need quarterbacks to get out of the way so you can get the guy you want. It's going to cost a lot. Yes, there's the Jimmy Johnson trade chart. That thing is thrown out the window when the quarterback value is as high as it's been over the years. It's just not a realistic thing to gauge at this point. Not for a quarterback. So I just don't see the Raiders trading up. I think they need to look at interior defensive line. I think they need to look at an offensive tackle. And if you can't get one of those 2 guys, two guys that can come in and start right away and be impact players, I think you get a corner. And there's a guy like Terrion Arnold had one of the best testing days. He's one of the youngest corners. He's one of the more Nick Saban raved about the guy, thought he was great. Kool-Aid McKinstry is a stud as well, but there's a ton of belief that Terrion's going to have a better career because he's just got the intangibles. He's got the size, he's got the speed. His broad jump and his lateral movement was unbelievable at his pro day. Some of the best we've seen at a large corner. Any corner, but out of a large corner. So if he's still available at 13, I'd entertain it, man. Like right now when I look at this mock draft simulator, there's options for the Raiders to move back to 16. Because I think Seattle's on the hunt for a quarterback too. There's no way they're extremely happy with Geno Smith. If they could trade up and get a Michael Penix, why wouldn't they? I'm just saying, man. So the Raiders could trade back to 16, get an additional third, get a fourth, maybe a second or third next year. It doesn't necessarily match the trade value chart, but we're talking about value here. So at 13, I would go Byron Murphy if you can. If not, trade out. If you don't find the right offer, take an offensive tackle if you don't want that interior defensive lineman. I'm just saying, man, there's options. Like, for example, I just traded back in this mock draft to 16, gained a third, a fourth, and a third next year, and I can still draft Byron Murphy. Sold. Absolutely sold. And somehow Michael Penix is still here in the second round. And I think that's basically based on rank. That's it. That is the only thing they have to go off of. One of the most impressive stats that I saw in here was Bo Nix. I was actually talking to my buddy or someone I highly respect in our league, our youth football league, who he runs a winning youth program. He's an excellent high school coach, got a high football IQ. Him and I were talking about Bo Nix. He may not have the biggest arm in the draft, but he's got laser-like accuracy, and his grade against pressure was the best. So if he somehow slips to the second round and the Raiders take him, I'd be thrilled. Because his pressure grade was 91.2. Does he have the same kind of arm Michael Penix does? No. But again, we've talked about this. I don't believe Michael Penix will make it past the first round. Bo Nix is likely, out of the top 5-6 quarterbacks, Bo Nix is likely the quarterback that is going to end up being in the second. But he will be a high second round pick. His grades, passing grade was 92.7. I mean, the guy, I think he threw 45 touchdowns this year to like less than a handful of interceptions. His passer rating was like near 140, which is almost perfect. When you look at his adjusted completion percentage, so he completed 77% of his passes this year. His adjusted, so based on drops and tip balls, his adjusted completion percentage was 85.5%. By far and away the biggest lead. But his downfall and why people are crapping on him is he's only 6'2", but he's a thick 6'2". Like, he's no joke. He's 24, almost 25 years old. He'll be an older rookie quarterback. Ton of tread, almost no injury history. But the biggest thing he's getting right now is his average depth of target, which is like 7 yards. Which is well below the average in the NFL. But let me tell you something, guys. His deep ball grade was 95.5. So when guys are open and he takes shots, it's usually really good. His intermediate was 94.7. His total passing grade, 92.7 out of 100. When you look at this, and we're not talking about talent with Caleb Williams, when you look at sheer grading from PFF, Bo Nix was the best quarterback in the draft. It's not true, but if he lands in the right situation, he could be. So I'm here in the second round. The Raiders had the 44th overall pick. Bo Nix is ranked the 34th rated player in this entire draft. Of course I'm going to take him. Yes, I love the idea of Michael Penix Jr. and his arm. I get it. But to me, pressure grade matters. And if you're telling me you could teach a guy to get under center and throw accurate footballs out of play action, which the Raiders are going to run, nope, you know what? I pulled a draft day flip. I'm going Michael Penix. Sorry, guys. Now we have 2 third-round picks. So my first round pick was what? Byron Murphy, right? My second round pick was Michael Penix. My third round pick, consistently throughout this entire process, essentially, was Jalen Wright out of Tennessee. But I think the Broncos are smart, and I think half the teams in the third round are probably going to be looking at him if he falls there and just grabbing him, because Jalen Wright out of Tennessee is special. So here are the guys that are available in this mock draft right now. T'Vondre Sweat, who is an absolute mammoth of a human being. I want to say he's like, his size was 6'4", 362. And at the Senior Bowl, he was taking on double teams and pushing back multiple 300-plus pound grown-ass linemen with ease. Someone like him at the nose and rotating Wilkins and Byron Murphy would be unbelievable. And there's a possibility that happens. But in the real world, I'm thinking that T'Vondre Sweat's probably not going to be there. Because someone's going to be enamored with his 6'4", 360-pound frame and his athleticism. I think he goes late in the second, maybe mid-second. So at this point, we're looking to bolster this roster, right? What are the two biggest needs on this roster? I think it's quarterback and offensive tackle. I believe adding an elite defensive lineman would be a luxury because it's a very valued position in today's league. But I'm just being real with you guys. If it were me, I'm going with a tackle here. Blake Fisher out of Notre Dame, big athletic guy, 6'6", 312. He's got a ton of power. According to PFF, here's their exact words. Has the power to play at the pro level, but needs to get quicker. That's a lot of right tackles if we're being honest. He also needs to be patient and balanced as his strikes to avoid susceptible NFL level speed rushers. Okay, so how do you combat that? You have a 21-year-old junior at 6'6", 312 pounds. If he really hits his speed and all that stuff, he's going to be great. Ideal for a man/gap scheme, which is exactly what Luke Getsy's going to run. It's exactly what Antonio Pierce is going to want to run. So that's perfect for what you're looking for. He's big, he's tall, he's long, and he can run block. Your right tackle should be one of your better run blockers on this team. He's a great pick at 21. How do you help a 21-year-old youngster who has some struggles in pass pro? You let a tight end chip or you assign a running back to them in pass protection to help with the edge. Because normally your right tackle is going up against the best pass rusher on the other team. For real. Like, that is just a tendency. Another guy I wouldn't be afraid to go after if Blake Fisher's not there for some reason, and it's very possible. I really like that Patrick Paul out of Houston. I think he's got a ton of potential. 6'7", 315. He's an athletic freak. He's got all the traits. He's got all the intangibles. I think he's faster than Blake Fisher, much faster, more athletic. He could be a possibility. At this point, it's not reaching because he's a guy that could come in and compete for the right tackle position. But we've already picked Blake. So what do we do at 81, our second, third round pick? T'Vondre Sweat is still there for some reason. So I'm taking him. The deeper of a defensive line that you have, the better a football team you're going to have, the more success you're going to have. We're now at 102. Bunch of different options. We need an offensive. We got our quarterback. We got two defensive linemen. So I think we're good on the interior because those two guys are studs, and both of them could be arguably impact guys from the very beginning to go along with Christian Wilkins and Max Crosby and Malcolm Kuntz. That's an elite defensive line right there, guys. Byron Murphy, T'Vondre Sweat added to that mix along with John Jenkins and Darius Butler. Dude, nuts. That is a nutty defensive line. Probably the best in the NFL at this point. It's crazy. But if I'm the Raiders, I'm in the fourth round, 102. What do you need? What is something that you definitely need? Guess what? You just lost a former rush champ. You just lost a guy that toted 1,000 yards a year for a while. So what do? You're running a zone. You're running a gap and I would say it's probably a wide gap scheme, Getsy. But overall, I'm looking for a guy that's going to stamp, get downfield. Right? I think Ray Davis out of Kentucky could very well be that guy. Listen, you have Zamir White on this team. You have Zamir White on this football team. Ray Davis doesn't have to come in and be a superhero. He just has to take 5 to 10 carries away from Zamir so Zamir stays fresh and effective. I think Ray Davis could be that dude. I also think Marshawn Lloyd out of USC, who is a very high impact guy. He's great out of the backfield. I think he's great in the passing game. He's an option as well. He's going to be faster. Yards per attempt was 3.97. Yards per attempt for Ray Davis, 3.8. Rushing grade for Ray Davis, 91. Gap grade for Ray Davis, 91.6. I want to say that Kentucky was very much a duos. So they ran a lot of duo and they ran a ton of power. So a lot of gap, so that's why that gap grade does not surprise me at all. His elusive rating is what. Here's another statistic I tell you. Elusive rating. So how many guys can you make miss? That matters in the NFL because those are where elite running backs come in. Do you think Josh Jacobs had elite speed? Not at all. Not even close. He could break away, he could score if nobody else was in the area, but he didn't have elite speed. What he was great at was taking a step and making a defender overextend. He was amazing at making moves and creating more space. His elusive rating had to be in the 100s. Easy, right? Ray Davis is at 96. Not bad. Let's look at Marshawn Lloyd. At this point, it's splitting hairs, right? We're trying to find a guy that's the best fit for your team. They're both about 5'8", 5'9", 210, 216 pounds. One's 23. The other is what? He's a senior. He's probably about 22, 23 as well. The thing with Marshawn Lloyd, he's not a super powerful back, but his elusive rating was 177. His gap grade was 93. And that's not surprising because even in an air raid offense like USC ran, they run a ton of power and a lot of counter, especially Lincoln Riley. He loves power and counter. So outside looking in, I like this Marshawn kid. He doesn't have to be Zamir White. He's probably going to be a bit more graceful. He doesn't have to be as powerful, but he's going to take plays off or he's going to take plays away from Zamir. I'm probably going to pick that kid. Now we're in luxury mode because we really only have to address two more positions, but they're not necessarily positions that have to be filled. So right now, the needs that you're seeing on PFF for the mock draft simulator is corner and linebacker. We filled everything else. We filled quarterback. We filled running back, offensive line. We filled defensive line. At this point, it's got to be BPA, man. You got to pick the best available for your team. I do see a 6', 190-pound corner out of Louisville, so that's pretty good. Forced incompletions, 6. Coverage stops, 6. Missed tackles, 5, which isn't too bad. Zone coverage is 78. His run defense was 75, so he's not afraid to come up and tackle, and that's huge with corners. And with the type of system that Patrick Graham runs, it's a lot of zone, so you have to have guys that aren't afraid to come up and tackle. Man coverage, unfortunately, was 61.7, but that's fine because, 75-80% of the defensive snaps last year were zone. So there's a possibility he could be a pick. Seriously. Or you go best available. Do we need to add to the tight end room? Do we need a future center? Is Andre James really a top 10 center? Is he somebody you could be with for the next 3 to 4 years? At this point, do we add more pass rusher depth? That's the beauty of picking really smart in the first few rounds. I do like that Cam Hart out of Notre Dame, by the way. He's big, he's long. The big thing with him is I don't know if he can move vertically that well. I don't think his hips are that loose, you know what I'm saying? But he's going to be excellent for zone schemes against big physical receivers. So I kind of like Cam Hart here. That addresses another need. Now we need to focus on building depth and getting a linebacker. There's a lot of things the Raiders could do, man, if they stand pat or trade back. And that's the beautiful thing about what we're talking about today. There's just so many possibilities. I don't think the Raiders need to go after their guy this year. I don't. It would be nice. It would be lovely if the Raiders had a franchise quarterback, especially with Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, Michael Mayer, Zamir White, an entire left side of the offensive line, which is very good. Trey Tucker is a stud at the slot. I think the Raiders could add another slot receiver for sure. But the reality is this, guys. The Raiders don't have to press. They went 5-4 with a 4th-round rookie last year with an inexperienced play caller. Now you bring in a more experienced play caller that isn't afraid to run the football heavily, that isn't afraid to complement the defensive strategy, that isn't afraid to do what Antonio Pierce is looking to do, which is set this team up to be one of the best play-action teams in the league, which is when the Raiders were at their best. That's when Derek Carr was at his best, when they ran play-action effectively. So I totally see that happening. I don't think the Raiders have to stretch for their guy. I really don't. That could be something they look into next year. There's going to be some really good quarterbacks next year, man. Quinn Ewers could be an option. Shedeur Sanders. That guy's dad was one of the greatest athletes we've ever seen. one of the better NFL players we've ever seen. You don't think that kid doesn't know football? Yes, he's struggled at Colorado for a bit, but that team was ass. Let's be honest, that team was horrible. Shedeur could be a guy, and he's kind of ready-made already. He's a smart, high football IQ player. He can run when he needs to, but he's an excellent thrower of the football. That's a possibility for the Raiders next year. The big thing is I don't think Raiders fans need to panic. I think the Raiders can fill their team, build their team, and do exactly what the Kansas City Chiefs did a few years back. They traded up for their guy when they knew they had an elite roster, a contending roster. And they didn't rush Patrick in. As great as he is, he didn't play his first year, which is amazing. They let him sit. He learned from Andy Reid. He learned from the offensive staff. He learned from Alex Smith, who was a consummate pro. They did it right. And I hate to say that because they're the Chiefs and they're a rival. But that's what the Raiders need to channel, man. Build an elite roster. Build a deep and elite contending roster. Then go get your guy. It's that simple. This is the Sin City Sports Show presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'm your host, Cale Henderson. You guys can get at us on our Twitter forums at SinCity_IESR, at Cale_Henderson, where we talk all things Vegas sports. You guys can catch us on all the main platforms, YouTube, Google Pods, Apple Pods. We're everywhere. And as always, folks, we'll see you next week, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. As always, love, peace, and hair grease, folks.